Good afternoon, Paul. How are you?
Good, Phil. Good. I'm doing fine. Thank you.
I'm excited about this. This afternoon we're here with Paul Tremont, who's a graduate of Bishop Ludden and is the former CEO of SRC, which, Paul, just for people's sake, can you talk about the size of SRC? Because I understand that it's got, locations and businesses all throughout the world,
Yeah,
and over 1,600 employees. Is that right?
yeah. SRC has grown up quite a bit since I've been there. So SRC is about a $400 million company. It's headquartered in Syracuse, New York, but it has locations. I believe it's about 7 locations in the United States, and then has offices in United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada.
Yeah.
So we're about 2,000 people now. It's
Yeah.
about 2,000 people. So
Oh, wow. So a large company, and it's nice to have that right here in our backyard, employing so many people, and being on the front lines and at the forefront of research and development.
yeah,
Um,
I've been very fortunate.
yeah. So, Paul, I want to bring you back a little bit. I want you to, what year did you graduate Bishop Ludden?
Yeah, I graduated in 1974, if you can believe that. If you can go back that far, 46 years ago, we just had our 45th anniversary.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, it was awesome.
oh, that's great. So when you think back about that experience, and especially now, what were some of your fondest memories, and what do you think you really took away from it?
Phil, you just said the appropriate word. I have very fond memories of my time at Bishop Ludden. I was challenged in so many ways, but in a positive way. I was taken out of my comfort zone. I grew up a lot at Bishop Ludden, and it was all within a very friendly atmosphere.
Yeah,
I never felt out of place. I never felt like people were looking down at me. I was accepted. I was exposed to so many different opportunities academically, sports, socially, and spiritually. It
right.
was the whole package. For the academic resources that were available to me when I was there, I can remember fondly how I participated in a computer science club. Now think about this is early
Right.
1970s. There
Right.
wasn't even a computer science curriculum. And I was able to participate in the chemistry and biology labs that I didn't experience before I went to Bishop Ludden. And they really formed the basis of what I did uh, once I graduated Bishop Ludden and went on to the workforce. And then, I could talk more about my participation in football and track, sports that I never played before I went to Bishop Ludden in an organized sense. And being on a team, an organized team, sport team, is a tremendous experience. You learn how to be coached. You learn how to
Yes.
be a team member. You learn
Yeah.
how to be successful. You learn how to be a failure because
Right.
you don't always start, right? You don't always get in and play. And just from that, it helped me out tremendously. And then socially, I came from a very small school before I went to Bishop Ludden, and socially, I walked in and I had to meet new people. I had to come out of my shell,
Right.
and these people were all from different backgrounds, and I didn't know them before became a freshman at Bishop Ludden, and Bishop Ludden provided me a very safe environment to meet these people and to socialize. Spiritually, I can't say enough spiritually what it taught me. It taught me it wasn't all about myself. It wasn't all about academics or sports, but it was about how you participated with individuals, how you lived by some values, how you respected individuals for who they are. Uh, it allowed me to be me, provided me the foundation of who I am. And also I really cherish that I have some lifelong friends
Yep.
I met at Bishop Ludden that I did not know before I went to Ludden. And these are my friends that I have today. I stay in contact. And it's just not one or two. It's almost the entire class. I, it's one of my fondest memories. Our class was so well knitted together and respectful for each other. And I give Bishop Ludden a lot of that credit.
I hear that a lot. We've had a chance to work with the school and meet some of its alums, and there is kind of that similar theme throughout, where people talk about the fact that they formed relationships that they've carried with them throughout their entire lives. They talk about the fact that they formed skills at the basic level that are holistic. When you think about the person, whether it's intellectually, whether it's socially, and like you said, spiritually. And I think that Ludden does have that type of unique experience where it comes together in that small knit community to form the whole person. And so we hear that from a lot of alums. If I take you and jump forward a little bit, I know that you're recently finishing up a little over a 30-year career with SRC. And we talked a little bit about the company, but tell us a little bit about your job, when you started with the company, and then how did your time there professionally finish?
Yeah, Phil, if you don't mind, I'd like to even jump back a little further after I graduated Bishop Ludden.
Sure.
I think it's a very interesting story. And I think, as I try to articulate how I started at Ludden, how it challenged me and it took me out of my comfort zone, I think that allowed me to grow and become a very diverse person and become the leader that I was and am today, not in the past sense. After I left Ludden, I went into the Environmental Science and Forestry School,
Yep.
right in Syracuse, New York. And then I went on and received an MBA from Virginia Tech. Both big steps from the Tremont family household, the household I grew up in. My dream was to work in the forest industry as someone who not only knew the science and math, again, well rooted in what I did at Ludden, the science and math, but also knew the business impact of those decisions.
Yep.
And my first job was as a forest economist in Brazil, of all places.
Oh, really? That's so interesting.
And again, it was a big step, but I believe that, going into Ludden was a huge step, and I felt very comfortable doing that. And going away to college was a big step. Again, it was a building block going. All started with my experience at Bishop Ludden. Well, the Brazil thing didn't work out too well, and I came back to the United States and I applied for a job, and I got accepted for a job as a applied mathematician and a software engineer in a small defense contractor company. After 5 years, I moved on, which then was Syracuse Research Corporation, which is now SRC. They changed the name. Okay. And I've been at SRC for 35 years, and I held many positions. I was a software engineer, a program manager, a director, a vice president, a chief operating officer, and president and CEO. I was a CEO for SRC. I was a CEO of SRC for 9 years, as we talked earlier. During this time, I saw tremendous expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Tremendous expansion. In my 9 years as CEO, we went from 950 employees to 1,600, revenue from 220 to $380 million.
Wow.
I mean, it really exploded and became quite an integral part of the community, which allowed me to start being able to find ways to give back to the community.
Sure.
All those accomplishments that I did in college and all those accomplishments that I did at SRC, which there's plenty of them. I received awards and whatnot, but there's nothing more gratifying than giving back to the community.
Yes.
And being part of an economic engine like SRC, and as a leader of SRC, to be able to direct it to help out the community that we live and work in. It was a tremendous benefit that I had.
I like one of the themes that has emerged from, you just talking over the last few minutes when you said that, Ludden really helped to push you outside of your comfort zone. And then you pointed to that and how you carried that through in your life and right after, going on to college here, but then really moving, somebody who grew up in Central New York and then moved, to Brazil. So that type of thing is a big move. And then like listening to the different types of positions that you've had throughout the company, I have to imagine that to move through those positions and learn each step of the way, you were evolving into new areas, new fields, and a lot of times I'm sure you had to push yourself outside of the comfort zone. And then when you take the company at large, in order to experience growth in the way that you did, $220 million to $380 million, and that's a large company that spans a global reach. You have to push the company as well to innovate and to learn and do new things. So that seems like a common theme throughout your life, Paul.
Yeah, and it's all rooted in that spiritual values that I received at Ludden. Not only the great academic and social skills that I received at Ludden, but I'm talking about the spiritual, about if you have to become, I believe, if you're a good leader, okay, you want people to accomplish the impossible,
Yeah,
okay? Because that's what we did at SRC. You got to connect with them. You got to respect them. You got to walk the talk in terms of your values.
sure.
That to me all started at Bishop Ludden for me. I could remember those religious education classes, and we talked about religion, but we talked about respecting other people. We talked
Right.
about values. We talked about that if you want to be respected, you had to respect those individuals. And to me, that formed a tremendous basis for who I am today, and the
Yep.
leader that I was at the leader that I was at SRC, and the leader that I am today in the community. I'm on many not-for-profit boards. I'm on the St. Joe's Hospital board, the ESF College Foundation, New Air, which is all about drones in the national airspace. I was one of the founding fathers of doing that. Honor Flight of Syracuse, where we honor our
Yes.
World War II veterans. I'm on the board there. And I'm a supporter of the United Way, the food bank, and one of my big passions is the many STEM initiatives that we have ongoing in Central New York. And there's nothing more important than educating our children, because to me they are our future. If we don't have an educated workforce that's academically there and spiritually there, we're in trouble. We're in trouble.
I agree. And, I think it's good for students, that come to Bishop Ludden throughout Central New York to see that you can go from Bishop Ludden and go on to do great things and have an impact on your community, have an impact in business. And we're grateful for the fact that you went on to do that, and that you take such a leadership role within our community right here at home. So you're a great asset to have right here in Syracuse. What would you say to students right now, Paul? Because when you and I are talking, the world is experiencing and going through this crisis of COVID-19 together. And leaders in companies, individuals in educational institutions, students, everybody needs to find a strong path forward together. What's some advice that you would give the current students that are at Ludden today?
Yeah, I mean, we were living in some very, very difficult times. I thought I lived in some difficult times with the Vietnam War and whatnot. And it's nothing like it is today. Everybody feels threatened by it. But as I look back, and as I tell many people, my own daughter, who is 25 years old, I say, look, I'm optimistic about the future.
Yeah.
Just as long as you're willing to work as a team and to come together as a community, we can overcome anything. And we've proven that. And what I mean by I mean society.
Yeah.
We look back in history, we all learn all the lessons through history, but one theme is there. And that is when we come together as a community, we can overcome any adversity.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe is going to happen here. As painful as it is, we're going to overcome it, and we're going to come out stronger. And so my advice to the students is just, stay focused on who you are, do great academically, and make sure that you live by values and you participate and pitch in to help your neighbor. Because if you do that, that's far more gratifying than any job that you would have. Far more.
No, I think that's really good advice. I think that's really well said. And you talked about, having that sense of optimism and how important that is. What are, a couple of things that you're really optimistic about for the future?
Well, I'm optimistic that our country will, as I mentioned earlier, our country will come together because I see so many examples, even though there's a lot of bickering, right? We see a lot of bickering. I see so many examples where people coming together and make a better world, helping their neighbors. So that to me is, I'm very optimistic about that. I'm optimistic about the education of our children,
Yep.
especially here in Central New York, but it goes farther than it goes across our nation. I see so many initiatives that are giving resources to societies, to communities to better educate their children. Again, as I said, this is important to me because children are our future. They're our future workers, employers, employees, and leaders. You
Hmm.
know, they're going to make our life easier. That's for sure. And I believe I'm optimistic. I see a tremendous amount of initiatives. I see everybody coming to the table when it comes to educating our children.
When you think back to Ludden, are there any stories that stick out, Paul, that where maybe you got in trouble, maybe you didn't have an assignment in on time, anything that you wouldn't otherwise maybe share with the students, but you might want to do today?
Well, Phil, I got a few of them, but and some but it goes hand in hand with the whole getting involved in the science and the math. There's two that come to mind when you ask me a question, and that is running Hawks Hill when I was on the football team. Hawks Hill down near the St. Camillus nursing home where
Yep.
we had facility, and I don't even know if it's still there, but it had to be 120 yards straight up, and we had to use to run it in football pads, and I tell that story all the time, how grueling it was, and you had to sprint up that hill. And to me, it made me a better person because it was so difficult, but you kept going at it.
Right. Right.
The second story I like to share, and this one is uh, is is somewhat almost got me in trouble, but unfortunately it did not. It was in science lab and in chemistry lab, not science lab, chemistry lab, and we were able to I call it freelance every once in a while, go in and get some chemicals and mix them together, and because of one of my older brothers, I won't name who it was, I how to do a couple things and I made this concoction and I said, well, it's probably better not to do this. So I washed it down the drain. And so then I was out in physical education playing softball. So it had to be towards the spring, summertime. And all of a sudden my Jerry Wilcox, I'm sure people know that name very
Yep.
well.
I've heard that name.
Comes looking for me and says, Tremont, what the hell are you doing in science lab? Sorry about my hell. I shouldn't have used that. I usually get. And I said, what? He goes, well, something kind of exploded in science lab. I said, what? And whatever washed down the drain must have dried up and made a pop or something. But he dragged me down to the lab, the chemistry lab, and said, you need to apologize to, I forget the sister's name, and apologize to her for disrupting her class. And, you better watch out what you're doing. So, that's the other beauty about Bishop Ludden. I'll tell you the truth. It provided the structure, and some people may call it discipline and why you need it, but it wasn't really discipline. It was a structure to stay within the bounds, so you had some guidance to do well.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I feel
that's well
I can tell you if I didn't go to Bishop Ludden, I don't know if I would have had that structure to do as well as I did. And it's not like they were, looking over your shoulder constantly. But if you got out of line, my parents took care of me, but they also took care of me and say, come on, that's not the right thing to do.
Yep.
Do it this way. And that helped form who I am also.
Well, those are great stories, and I think you've given great insight and shared some really great memories, and I love that you are still optimistic, even in the most trying times. So, we're extremely grateful for all that you do for the community, and particularly what you do for Bishop Ludden. I know that you're there for the school's leadership during this time. I know that you're there for the students in this way, and you're helping to connect other alums back to Ludden. So we're really grateful for all that you do, Paul. And thanks for taking the time to chat with us today. We appreciate it.
Oh, I'm happy to do it, Phil. Thank you.